witches, welcome back and welcome to the first day of Vlogtober. I had every intention of putting this video up yesterday, but I wouldn't be me if things went according to plan. So we are doing it today. I am going to have some sort of video up every day in October, hence the name Vlogtober. It will not, however, be a vlog. Some of them are going to be sit-down videos like this one, and then some of them are going to be like fall and witchy related activities that I'm getting up to in the month of October. But it should be a good time. I have a couple of things already planned and ready to go, and I am looking forward to it. So you can expect to see a video from me each day this month. But I just had like a wild 2 weeks. I'm good. Hawkeye and John are good. No worries. But it has just been like a bunch of other stuff going on with like family and work. And it has been an absolute wild 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden we were at October and I was like, I really need to get this up. So I am doing it today, even though it is a little bit dark, and I also have other things on my to-do list to work on, but I wanted to make sure that I was able to get my monthly recap done. Each month this year, I have been going over my goals for 2024, my two main ones being a no-spend year specifically related to books and witchcraft items, and also to read 200 books and give you my reviews on them. So this month we passed 200, so that's already done. But I am going to continue with my book reviews. So first, let's go back and recap my spending for the month. I had $325.83 on my pet spending for the month. There wasn't anything crazy. It was just food and grooming and treats and her monthly medications. So just an expensive month of pets. And groceries was also expensive. We spent $582.60 this month, and that seems high to me. I don't really know why that is, because I don't feel like we have a ton of food, but I do think that we did like a meat stock up, so the freezer is pretty full. So hopefully I won't be spending as much in groceries because that is the most expensive part of it in the next couple of months. We'll see. For household expenses, I spent $54.04. I even forgot what I spent, but usually household expenses I separate out from groceries, but that's things, you know, like paper towels, cleaning supplies, toilet paper, all that stuff. So something in there I bought. Who knows what. I spent $6.09 on postage. I have a giveaway or regular giveaways over on Patreon, so I have to ship the winner their prize. I spent $120.77 on gas and a car wash. I usually don't fill up as much as I did this month, but I did end up going up to Wisconsin to go shopping with my friends, so just spent a little more on gas this month, driving around a little bit more. And I also spent $128.35 the other day getting an oil change done, which is has been part of the problems and all the stuff going on, because I went over and I did that on Monday. Today is Wednesday. And as of then yesterday, my car wouldn't start. So that's super fun. So when my husband gets home, we have to jump the car battery and see if that fixes it or what the hell the problem was. So that is frustrating. So hopefully no big car expenses this month, because I will be mad. And I spent $129.34 on gifts. This was mostly for John, just no particular holiday, but like I said, I went out shopping with my friend and there were a couple of things there that I ended up getting for him and vice versa. So there was no shopping for myself because everything that I got is an early gift from John. So we basically just swapped early Christmas presents, or my birthday's in November, so early birthday presents. But I did get 2 sweaters, 2 jeans, a pair of sweatpants while we were up shopping, because I just needed clothes. I didn't have clothes for fall and winter. So that is what I ended up getting. And so that is what came in. And then also this sweatshirt that I'm wearing came in. It's an Angry Possum and says, "First of all, I'm a delight." And I love it. That was also from John. And I also got the 7th Percy Jackson book that just came out. My husband pre-ordered that for me like forever ago because I love those. when I was younger, and then went back and wanted to read all of them again, which I did earlier this year, and then realized that there was a 6th and 7th book coming out in that series, and 7 just came. So I'm going to be reading that in the month of October. And then I also got 2 PR books. So that's everything that came in, everything that I spent. So a more expensive month than usual. On to the reading. So I read 25 books in the month of September and 11,425 pages. I did not give out any 1-stars, but I did have 3 2-star reads, 5 3-star reads, 14 4-star reads, and 3 5-star reads. And I think only one of those was an actual 5-star, but there were 2 that I rated 4.5, and it was like, if I'm thinking about it and like rounding, I would round those up. So let's get into those. I do like to start with the witchcraft books. So I read 4 witchy books in the month. The first being Find Your Soul Path by Emma Griffin, and Emma has a YouTube channel here as well. So I think if you watch her YouTube channel and get a feel of like her style, how she speaks, the things she talks about, you will get a very good feel for what this book was. So I gave it 4 stars. It's a very sweet, like slow, nurturing book. It's exactly what it sounds like, your soul path. So there is, you know, a little bit of shadow work, a little bit of slow living, of just nurturing what it is that your soul needs in your witchcraft path and your spiritual journey. So I thought that was like a really sweet, slow read with really pretty photos. Overall, had a good time with that one. I also read The Witch's Home by Jo Caldrick, and I gave that one 3 stars. I thought it was pretty, but maybe not the most useful, especially if you've read any sort of hearth witchcraft books before. I thought this was like very beginner basics focused, not really anything new in there. And also I felt like it needs a bibliography. That makes me crazy when it doesn't have one, and there's sort of like general basis of knowledge of like information, like you still got that from someplace. So I just felt like it needed that. So 3 stars on that one. And I gave 4 stars to Modern Magic by Michelle T, which I won't talk too much about because I believe that is the episode that's up today. So I think that as I'm gonna get this recorded and edited and posted, that episode will be up like at the same time. So you will be hearing all from Michelle, but I really like this. It is, you know, where Emma's book was very like slow and nurturing. This is much more like a fun, like memoir-y of being, you know, goth witchy in the 80s and like telling stories from that, from Michelle's point of view, and then diving deeper into some, you know, wide topics across the board. But there is like some things that would be considered like more advanced witchcraft. So there's like a whole wide variety with some like fun stories throughout, and just like telling her life story. So I had a great time with that. So it's like definitely a difference between like a very slow living type of book and then a very like upbeat, little wilder type of book, and you can just see their personalities come out so much in each of those writings. So it all depends on what sort of topics you're interested in and the style of writing that you like more, but I do recommend both of those. And the witchy book that I gave 5 stars to is one that is going to be coming out later this month. I think it's on the 22nd. And that is the Step-by-Step Astrology Workbook by Jessie Eccles. And I got the digital arc of this from NetGalley, and then I cannot wait until the physical print comes out later this month because I want it. It's exactly what it sounds like, an actual workbook to work through your birth chart and your astrology. Because I always do that where like I look it up and I want to learn something about a house or placement, and then I read it and I learn it, and then I promptly forget about it. Like I only remember the highlights from it. And I learn so much better when I'm like writing it down and doing the work for myself. And I hadn't yet found an actual workbook to document those things and work through it kind of step by step in a way that makes sense. And this book makes so much sense, the way that it works through it, because astrology can be such a huge topic, and even just your own birth chart can be such a huge topic. It's very overwhelming very quickly. So I really loved how this walked through it and pulled out some of the more important parts that can kind of make up your personality and how you work in your witchcraft practice, topics that might interest you. So I really enjoyed how that went through like the step-by-step guide. And then by the end, I was like, I have a handle on this. Like, I feel good about it, but I do want to get that printed version so I can actually write things down inside the book and have it all in one spot and really work through my own birth chart. So highly recommend that one. My true 5-star read of the month. Since I read so many, I am going to run through some of my fiction reads here and just give you star ratings, yes or no's, and then see if that is something that you're interested in. And then we'll get into some of the ones that I have more to say about, I will do at the end. So first up, coming out in February, Silver and Smoke by Van Huang. I gave this one 3.5 stars. We are following two girls in like the golden age of Hollywood, like 30s and 40s. And they grew up basically as sisters and from a poor background, but they wanted to make it in Hollywood. And I thought the plot was a little slow to start, but then we really get into the sort of more like fun fantasy aspect of it, in that one of the girls comes from a family of shamans where they can channel the dead. They can light some incense and get a mirror, and the dead person that they want to talk to will be there. So they have reached out to the girl's grandmother, who puts them in touch with another ghost who was a famous actress in Hollywood. And she is going to help them get in and talk to all the right people and find the right producers and the right roles in order to make it in Hollywood. And of course, it turns dark. So I loved the magical aspect of that, and the magic system I think was really fun. And there was a lot of the commentary of how, like, just being an actress, being a woman in Hollywood. They're also both Asian, so it's about getting typecast and the prejudice and stereotypes that they had to deal with all coming together. So I thought it was a really great book. It was just a little slow in places, like I needed more plot. I read Ghostsmith by Nikki Pau-Preto. That is the second. It's a duology about necromancy. It is a YA version of Gideon the Ninth. If you've read Gideon, you will absolutely see the comparisons. If you read this one, the first one was Bonesmith, second Ghostsmith, and it is all about her necromantic abilities, which is a magic that I love to read about in books. So I had a good time with that one. It is as good as the first. Sometimes the second in a duology doesn't always live up to it, but I really enjoyed both of those. I gave both of those 4 stars. Next up, 4 stars to Lightfall by Ed Crocker. This comes out in January, and I enjoyed this one, and I can also say that I know it's not for everyone. This is vampires, werewolves, fantasy. There's no humans in this, which I thought was an interesting take on it. But for me, I love plot. I care less about character development. There's no character development in this. So if you need that in your books, you're not going to like it. And I know some people want to know, like the backstories, figure out where these characters are coming from, like why they are doing things. You really don't get that here, like a little bit, but not really. But since I like plot, this kept the plot moving along, and I gave it 4 stars. One I gave 3 stars to. This comes out in April, and it is House of Blight by Maxime Martineau. And another one of like fantasy magic system. She has healing abilities that she's not supposed to have as a human, and this Fae family finds out. Overall, kind of a good read, but it read young. It's not marketed as YA, so I don't know why it read so young, and the main character is just super frustrating, so it landed at just a 3 for me. 2.5, and I feel like maybe I rounded it down to 2 when I was counting. That is The Vengeance by Emma Newman. That comes out in May, and I feel like you could probably skip this one. It is an okay pirate story, but it's literally called The Vengeance, and it's like #1 in the pirates or the vampires of Dumas. And with that title, you would think vampires. Like, it's a pirate story, and you don't get vampires until like 85% of the way into the book. Like, they're hinted at, but you don't actually get the vampires until like the very end. And then the main issue of like with the vampires is resolved in like 10 pages, and then what? So like, I'm so confused about where this is going to go because it's like called number one. So I'm like, where would you even take the second one? And why are there no vampires in most of the story when the title says vampires? I don't know. So it's a quote pirate story, like an okay pirate story. But mostly I was just like frustrated. I was like, this doesn't make sense. And another nonsense one that I gave 2.5 stars to was Famous in Love by Rebecca Cyril. This was in my like one of the little free libraries in the neighborhood. And I looked at it and I was like, I distinctly remember watching some like TV show or movie starring Bella Thorne that was like about this book, but I had never read the book. And I was like, I remember the TV show being silly and ridiculous, and now I want to read the book. And it was absolutely silly and ridiculous little YA romance story. So if you've heard of the TV show, you've probably heard of the book. If not, skip it. I reread the Red Rising original trilogy. So I had originally read Red Rising by Pierce Brown. The original trilogy was Red Rising, Golden Sun, and Morning Star. And I had originally read the first two, and for some reason I had never read Morning Star. So I wanted to go back and read those because there has been now an expansion in that. I think there's 2 more that are out and maybe like 1 more coming. And I loved Red Rising. I overall gave the whole series 4 stars, maybe 4.5. And it is my brother-in-law's absolute favorite series, so much so that he is getting a Red Rising tattoo in a couple of weeks. He's going to get one of the weapons like on his forearm that they feature in the books. And I was like, okay, let's go back and reread those and then maybe get into what's been added and like the newer books in the series, which he also says that he loves and are great. I just have not gotten to them yet because obviously I read a lot already in September, and I heard that they were emotionally devastating, like as much as the first 3 are. So I didn't think I was ready for that. So I was like, we're just gonna wait, but at least like read the original trilogy, which has like a little bit of an ending. But then the next books are set like a few years, I think like 10 years or so into the future. So I was like, let's wrap up this trilogy, and overall 4 stars. Like Red Rising is great. It's been out for a while, so if you know and you love the fantasy genre, then you probably have already read it, but if not, give it a go because great. In the fantasy romance genre, I was surprised by Flame and Sparrow by S.M. Gaither, and I also read the second, which was Ash and Feather. The first one I gave 4 stars, the second one 3 stars. It just wasn't as good. But usually that fantasy romance can be hit or miss. Like sometimes they're really tropey and over the top, but I really enjoyed Flame and Sparrow. I thought that was a good one. We are following Karis, who is an elf, and we have humans, elves, and then these sort of like demigods. And there are these like 3 creators that created everybody. Originally, the elves were at their right hand and had all the power, and then somewhere along the way they lost it. They lost favor and had their power taken away, so they have little snippets but not what they once were, and the humans now hate them and have replaced them with these demigods. So Karis is out to destroy the demigods, destroy all their temples. They want to get the elves back in power. So of course she meets and falls for one of the demigods, and we are following her story from there, battling between the demigods and the elves and where she fits in this new world. It's your standard enemies to lovers fantasy romance, but I thought it was really well done. The second one I loved less because I thought it relied too heavily on the smut aspect, and I just don't love that. So there wasn't as much like plot and not as much fun as the first one. In that same sort of realm of fantasy romance, YA fantasy romance, I finally read Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, and this came out in 2015, and I gave it 3.5 stars now, and I think if I had read it in 2015, I would have rated it higher, because that would have been sort of starting the like genres and like tropes and things that I enjoyed. And now I can see when people say like, oh, this is, you know, came from Red Queen, they're getting this like storylines from here. I can see that in a lot of the books that I read now. So this was probably one of the more like original in the genre, and like now a lot are like pulling from that. So I think I would have enjoyed it more if I read it when it first came out, but still I thought it was good. So ones I have a little bit more to say on, but can't really explain the plot to you, and that is getting into the epic fantasies of the month that I read. So I finally read Malice by John Gwynne, and that came out in 2012, and I have heard things like back and forth. Like some people will like give it like their ultimate 5 stars, and then some are like, this is overrated. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. One of the ones that I would round up to 5. Just the reason that it's not like a true 5-star is because I thought it was slow to start and slow to like get into the story. By the end, of course, I was hooked and I wanted to continue on in the series. I think there's 4 books total. But for this first one, it was just too long. I think it was 672 pages, and it could have easily been 100 pages less and been fine and gotten everything that you needed to with the story. So I thought it was just a little bit too long because it was slow to start. But then once I got into it, loved it. But we follow like a bunch of different characters in this fantasy world. It is impossible to explain the plot to you. And like I could read you the summary, like what's on the dust jacket, and it still doesn't make sense, or like it's not exactly what the book was about to be. So it's just like impossible to explain the plots there. So I will not try. And another one like that I gave 4 stars to, also love, is The Crimson Queen by Alec Hudson. And I had read on Kindle Unlimited, and The Crimson Queen is a Prime read as well, so free on there. And I had read another one last month, 2 months ago, by Alex Hudson. I was like, oh, I like their writing. So this one came out first in 2016. I was like, I want to go back and read other things that they have written and like more of their like completed series. And this held up. I liked it. I thought it was a little slow in places. That's why it didn't get the 5 stars. And there's a ton of like the general like epic fantasy tropes that you get, but I wouldn't read the genre if I didn't like the tropes. So I don't think that that's like necessarily a bad thing. I just think with epic fantasy, sometimes the first one in the series can be a little slow in the plot as you're sort of building everything up and building the world and the characters. So I think that that was my downsides with both Malice and the Crimson Queen, why they didn't get perfect 5 stars. But I do think as I continue in the series, it's highly likely that the following books would get higher ratings. However, as much as I love the epic fantasy genre, and I do, it is my favorite to read from, I only gave 2 stars to, this is going to be a very unpopular opinion, Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is beloved. This came out in 1995, and the whole series is beloved, and I can see why it is. And I do enjoy the writing, and I think that I could enjoy other Robin Hobb books, but this had no plot. This read like a prologue to somebody's story, and I would rather read like the actual assassin going around and then getting like snippets of his backstory. But this was just the backstory. This was the assassin is dropped off at the castle at 6 years old, and we literally follow the entire life up until adult. And I'm like, I'm bored. So it's a really well-written classic, but for somebody else. And I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I like plot and I don't care that much about character development. And this is 100% character development, very little plot. And that's the exact opposite of what I like. So I am sorry. I know that is a beloved epic fantasy, but it is not for me. And I also will say, I guess that this might be kind of a spoiler, so jump ahead, 30 seconds if you don't want to know. But I am too much of a dog lover for this book. There are multiple dogs in it. It's part of the main character's powers is being able to sort of mentally connect with animals. And it's too much like too close to the dogs, and then things happen to the dogs, and that upsets me, and I'm too much of an animal lover to read this. So if you are also like that and upset by things that happen to the animals, like in Game of Thrones, don't read this. You're not gonna like it. I feel like I'm getting to the end here. I still have so many more. I read another Rick Riordan, and that was Daughter of the Deep. Like I said, I was working through all the Percy Jackson books, but Rick Riordan has a rich backlog, and they overlap a lot of them. The Percy Jackson, Magnus Chase, and Kane Chronicles are in all sort of like the same world. This is still middle grade fantasy, but it is completely separate. It's like a nod to Jules Verne, and I liked it. I gave it 4 stars, and I do like Rick Riordan's middle grade writing. I thought this was dark for middle grade. If you have read it, do let me know if you agree with that. But this is not a spoiler. It happens in the first few pages, and it is on the plot summary that we are following Anna and her class at this like elite, prestigious, specialized school leave for basically a field trip. So I'd say there's like maybe 20 of them. And they say goodbye to like their friends. Some of them have like siblings at the school or whatever. And they drive away for their field trip. And then they watch the school get attacked and fall into the sea. So everybody's presumed dead. And that presumption lasts throughout the entire book. Like you don't get a resolution on that. And that's dark for middle grade, I thought. I was like, when I read that and like it didn't get like resolved right away. It doesn't, because Rick Riordan claims that this is a standalone. Like there's definitely room that you could have more books in this series and find out what happens next, but he hasn't written any and doesn't seem to have plans to, and this came out in 2021, so I don't know. But I thought that was dark for middle grade, but I liked it, and I thought it was well written, and I am semi-familiar with Jules Verne and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which is boring but a classic, so I have read that, and I thought that this was an interesting take on it and got a lot more information and made the story more fun. But yeah, overall, dark read for kids. One that I read, like, I don't know, I gave it 3 stars. I'm going to continue in the series, and I don't even know that I could recommend it. This is on Kindle. I think it's 4, there's like 4 books. They should be 1, I'll tell you that right now. Splitting up into 4 is ridiculous, and it's trash. However, The Marriage Auction by Audrey Carlin. I have no idea how I even like started reading it. It's like the Real Housewives meets an episode of Maury. Like it's absolute trash in the best way that like you can't look away from. And I thought I was gonna like DNF like 20 pages in, and I was like, nope, I am still reading this. And we are following 4 women who put themselves up for auction to get married to billionaires for a minimum of $3 million for 3 years, at the end of which you can leave the marriage, get divorced, and go on with your life with your $3+ million that you got paid. So they have various reasons for needing the money or wanting to escape their past and marrying these guys. So and then it like follows the couples, and it's not like a ton in plot, despite it was like 334 pages. I don't know why there's 4 of them. I probably will like go and read them, because it's like trash in the best way. It's like not highly rated, but when you need like a turn your brain off book between like epic fantasies, I read it and I had a good time with that, and it surprised me too. Okay, now we're actually at the end. I have 2 last things to talk about. First was The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington, which I gave 4.5 stars. Another one that, and when I'm thinking about it, I would round it up to 5. And this was the same author that wrote The Will of the Many, which is like my top read so far of the year. And this was his first work. I think it's a completed trilogy. And people said that there were a lot of things in this that weren't like great that he then fixed in his writing going into The Will of the Many. And I could see that there were parts that were like a little bit slow, maybe like a little bit overwritten, and parts that didn't totally like make sense or like fit. Like there's action scenes, like fight scenes, and the characters would just like say something to each other that I'm like, if you were really like fighting with your lives and like on the run, like you're not taking the time out to like have this little conversation, like let's get moving. Like it just didn't make sense in that, which I do agree that he fixed in The Will of the Many. But still, I like loved this. This was one of my best epic fantasies of the month. I read a couple, as you saw. I think this one was my favorite. So I just really like his writing and world building, and cannot wait to continue in that series, which is also, I think, on Kindle someplace. I don't remember where I got it. It might have been like on sale on Prime Day, and I bought it for like $2 or something way back when. So I do enjoy that one, and definitely recommend James Islington as an author, one of my favorites. And very last thing on the list is the Spark of the Everflame trilogy is out right now. There is a 4th book coming out. I have no idea when it's coming out, but I read all 3 of the ones that are out. That is Spark of the Everflame, Glow of the Everflame, and Heat of the Everflame. It's like the Kindred Curse series or something on Kindle Unlimited. And I enjoyed it. I think overall it is a 5-star or 4-star series for me. The second book being the best one. Like first has the same issues of like being a little slow to get started and get into it. second has better like plot and like side characters, and you get more from them. And then the third was just too long. Like it's over 1,000 pages. The third one, 1,026 pages, like could have been like 700. It got really repetitive in a lot, and then we focus in the third one just on the main character and her romantic interest and less on the side characters. And I thought the side characters were like the best part. They're the most fun. And the main character gets super annoying in the third one. She gets really like indecisive and very naive, and it just doesn't fit with her character. Like she's like a much like stronger, smarter character than you're led to believe in the third book. So that got kind of frustrating. And then the only other thing like that I did enjoy like the first and second books like more than the third. But the thing that would keep it from being like 5 stars for me is it's so heavy-handed in the foreshadowing. Like I like Sarah J. Maas, I know, I'm a fan. But she'll drop things in that then like 200 pages later make sense, but you kind of like forgot about or like didn't realize that they were going to be so important. In this, like it's kind of hitting you over the head that like something is going to be important. You're like, okay, I get it. Like we're going to see this come up and it makes sense to us as the reader, but then not to the main character. And I'm like, you are not this dumb, like, you know? So that got a little frustrating. I'm like, okay, give your readers a little more credit. We know where this is going. Like we can pick up the clues, and if we don't, then it'll make sense to us later when we come back to it. So I didn't think it needed to be so over the top with that. Overall, it's another fantasy romance in the line of the Red Queen, where we have the main character Diem, who thinks that she is normal, mortal, but there are these fae. They call them descended, that they, live forever and have certain powers based on like the kingdom that they live in. And they're terrible and keep the humans down and kill mortals, treat them terribly depending on where they live. And so she wants justice for her mortal friends and family. But then of course, turns out, surprise, she has powers. So it is just like Red Queen, where it's like figuring out where she fits in this world. So that's kind of like the theme of a lot of the fantasies that I read this month, with the Red Queen and Flame and Sparrow, and this one kind of all in that same realm. And that's why I like to break them up with like middle grade and ridiculous reads like The Marriage Auction, just so like the stories don't all run together in my head, because there are like very similar tropes that run through those. So I think that's it. And I feel like I've been talking for an hour, but that was a lot of books to get through, even though I kind of wanted to run through them quickly and just give you star ratings. That obviously didn't happen because I am chatty. But anyway, that is the first day of Vlogtober. There's also a podcast episode up today. So two videos instead of just the one. And then I will be back tomorrow with, I think, planners are coming up tomorrow, and there will be a giveaway. So stay tuned for that. And if there is anything that you would like to see during this month and see for Vlogtober, then do let me know, and I will make that happen before the end of the month, because this is my favorite time of year. So let me know what you're getting up to. Do you have any fun October plans coming up, whether they are witchy or otherwise? And let me know if you have read anything on my list that I talked about today, particularly The Marriage Auction. Let me know. That's everything that I have. I will see you all tomorrow.